Do you honestly think this is for anyone to ride? Some preamble to set the scene. I'm really into cycling and have been for many, many years. I started riding back in the 1970s when I was really young. I come from a family of road racers, so it was sort of inevitable. I also live up to the rules of the Velomanati, especially Rule 25 about the bikes on the roof of the car being worth more than the car. Having saved up, I bought my dream bike, a Cervelo Caledonia 5 with Dura Ace due to electronic gear shifters. This bike cost me almost £11,000. A couple of months ago, I heard of an event running around 50 miles away where a company were launching a few of their new bikes. I decided to spin over and have a look just out of interest and set off. It was a great ride over, and when I arrived, there were a few other riders I know, and we set off looking round the bikes on show. I locked my bike onto one of the rocks and took one of the newly launched bikes out for a quick circuit. I had a chat with the tech guy from the company and then unlocked my bike. QEM and her entitled spotty teenager. Hello, can my son have his turn on that bike now? Me what? Yes, you've had your time on it, and my son wants his ride on it. He really likes it. Me sorry, he can't ride this. Perhaps look at some of the bikes the company have brought. No, we saw you have your ride on this bike now. He wants a turn. You can't monopolize the bikes. Her son then made a grab for my bike and pulled it from my hands and tried to ride off. There his first mistake was not realizing that I have very specific lipless pedals, and without the correct cleats, you're not going to get far. Second, I had left the bike in a very high gear. It's a cafe stop thing. It's almost impossible to set off quickly and is one of my ruses to help avoid a snatch and grab theft of the bike. I grabbed the little jit and pulled him off my bike, just stopped it falling to the floor. One of the team running the demo came over to see what was going on, and he went off in true form. This man has just pushed my kid off your bike when it was my kid's turn to ride it. I want my son to have his ride on this bike now. Bike guy, this isn't one of our bikes. Our bikes are all over there. This is the visitors' bike park area. Why is he riding this bike then, pointing at me? Me, because I am the one who owns this bike. You could see the cogs turning as she realized what was going on. The fake smile broke out. I'm really sorry. I thought it was one of the demo bikes. I pointed to the manufacturer's flags all round the demo session, and I pointed to the name on my bike. Me, does this look like it was made by the company running this session? I'm playing dumb, I'm sorry. I really didn't realize. It's a nice bike though, my son is thinking of buying one. Can he try yours out? Me, I very much doubt he would be buying one of these, but I'm going to need your details. Why? Me, well, your son, supported by you, snatched a bike worth £11,000 out of my hands and tried to ride off on it. I'm going to need to know who to send the repair bill to for any damage he caused. He went white, then tried to argue that there was nothing on the bike that could cost that much. The bike guy from the company assured here that there certainly was. We called a PCSO who was at the event over and explained everything that had happened. He obtained the AM's contact details and passed them to me. I told her I would be in touch later and then had a ride back home. No damage was done to the bike, but I did sting her for a full service at my local bike shop.
Lady loses her mind because I'm deaf. So some backstory first. I work at a large grocery store chain. As someone who stocks groceries, replaces items that have been left or returned throughout the day, and various other chores around the store. It's a pretty small store, so most of the employees can do almost all of the tasks. So this particular night I was putting away a cart of items that customers decided they didn't want overstock or were damaged. There was a separate area where damaged items went, obviously. Now I should preface this with the fact that I'm not completely deaf. I can faintly hear things like slamming doors, loud phones ringtones, and some things like that, though I cannot hear voices at all, even loud yelling. While I am deaf, I know sign language, have a large pin and lanyard that I wear that informs people that I am in fact deaf. In addition to this, I have a small notebook that has a variety of pre-written responses to questions, sort of like flashcards. But communication is difficult sometimes. I try my best to make things work, and I am very prepared. Most people are understanding, work with me, and we get through the conversation. Some kind people even sign with me. That always makes me smile. I am pretty young, and don't look like the typical hearing impaired person. So when people sometimes get a little grumpy because I don't respond right away, they're very apologetic. Not this time. This is where the story gets good. In the cast we have me, the deaf teenager, Crazy Karen, CK, Nice Customer, NC, Store Manager, M1, Regional District Manager, M2. So I'm mulling along one evening and decided to get an early start on the overstock from the day. Was filling a shopping cart to the max. Since this was earlier than I normally began, there were more people still in the store as opposed to when I usually started. No big deal. I started anyway. About half a shopping cart later, I'm in the paper towels section when I feel someone roughly poke me in the shoulder. I jump and turn around startled to see this lady. She's taller than me, and I'm no slouch. I'm 6 feet tall, or 72 inches. She is very thin, probably mid-50s. Frizzy blonde hair only held back by a bright red MAGA hat atop her head. Not that there is anything wrong with supporting Trump, but this lady hit all the stereotypes of a Trump supporter. This back in September of 2020, and of course she doesn't have a mask on. She begins to what I assume was yell, judging by the aggressive look on her face. I begin to point to my lanyard and ears, trying to communicate that I can't hear her. According to the NC, who I will introduce in a moment, she was saying things like, "I'm talking to you. I've been trying to get your attention for 5 minutes." She then takes a step forward and grabs my lanyard. Yanking it violently, and it gets unspanned from around my neck. She throws it to the ground. At this point, I'm very nervous and beginning to panic. I try to actually say I can't hear, but I'm not sure how it came at, as I've never actually heard my own voice. Masso says it sounds very cute, however. It's at this point the NC enters the picture. I see him round the corner. A 30-something-year-old man, I assume, rounds the aisle and walks up to the CK asking what the problem was. This is all what he wrote down for me, saying what he said after the incident. NC looks over to me, and I frantically point the pen on my mask and grab my notebook and scribble down. I'm deaf and I don't know why she's yelling at me. NC turns to CK and they exchange some words. Things like, "Can't you see he's deaf? Why are you yelling at a kid like that?" And responses like, "He's not deaf. He's just ignoring me because he's a lazy little ass." This goes on for a few minutes, and I finally begin to cry, as this has caused a scene with people starting to surround us. It finally attracted the attention of my managers M1 and M2. M1 walks up to me while M2 walks to NC and CK, who have now really started shouting at each other. M1 knows sign and asks me if I'm all right. I say I am and wipe the tears from my face and grab my lanyard from the ground. M1 tells me to grab my things and wait for her in the employee break room. About 15 minutes later, M1 and M2 walked in with a police officer. The CK had been arrested. M1 explains to me in sign language that CK had been arrested for third-degree assault, and the officer needed a written statement and asked if I wanted to press charges. I happily say yes and give my statement. The NC stuck around, and I wrote him a thank you note, and one also gave him a gift card for being an upstanding citizen. That was by far the worst experience I've ever had with a customer, but I'm thankful that awesome people like NC, M1, and M2 exist. Also, CK got sentenced to a few months in jail, probation, and was fined a hefty amount, and I honestly hope it destroys her life. And it will. I never expected this to blow up like it did. I want to say thank you for all the kind words of support and love. I'd like to address something I've seen being commented, though. It was never quite my intention to be political. I simply pointed out what head she was wearing. Let me be clear. I don't care about political stuff. I never meant to downplay any bad behavior or anything like that. I simply was giving my honest opinion, as I couldn't care less about what candidate you support in an election.
Check out my other splendid videos.